Hey guys, it's Sam, and today I want to do a book chat on loving something and still being able to discuss its flaws. This is something that I talk about a lot on Tumblr. It's like my favorite discourse of all time. It's just what I love to discuss because I find that, especially on places that are really big based in fandom, like Tumblr, you have this rabid fan thing where you're not allowed to say anything bad about something you love because that makes you a bad fan. And you will be criticized if, like, you just don't appreciate it as much as I do, and all this stuff if you say something bad about something that's really well loved. And there are a lot of very popular, massive fandoms on Tumblr, not just with books, but with everything, which I'm going to talk about it in like an everything way. But I found this very commonly with a couple of different book fandoms, which is why I wanted to discuss this, and just because I do get different kinds of comments and stuff relating to different books that I don't like, or books that I do like, but still discuss their flaws. Because I think that's important, especially as a reviewer, to discuss the flaws of something, even if you love it. That's why, like, even on books that I really, really enjoy, I'm still like, okay, I'm willing to say, like, this thing, even though it didn't bother me, could bother other people, etc., etc. I don't want to get off track because there's a lot to talk about this. I'm, like, excited about it. It's, like, one of my favorite things to discuss about, like, books and critiquing books and stuff is, like, being able to just criticize things that you love. So like I said, there is something about fandom and attaching yourself and your identity to a thing that you love, whether it be a book, a TV show, a particular character, where you cannot possibly hear anything bad about them because it's like a deep insult to yourself. That's why you see a lot of disclaimers on BookTube or really anywhere as far as reviews and stuff, where people are like, this is just my opinion and I'm not saying anything, and because people get so offended if you insult their fave. And believe me, I've been there. I used to be there a lot. And I still have moments where, like, if you insult my absolutely favorite character, I'm like, why did you come in my house and do that? Like, because if someone's coming at you, then it's more of like a, why are you here and doing that? But if somebody has legitimately reasons for not liking a certain character, like I've heard people say, for example, that Alina Starkov, my precious baby queen of the Grisha trilogy, is like cold and they don't like her character, they find her annoying and whiny. And I'm like, okay, I admit that, like, there's the way she's written, maybe you interpret it that way. I happen to love her, and it's okay because you're not insulting me. You're not saying anything about me by saying you hate my favorite character. But I feel like a lot of people, especially if you don't really think about it, you're like, I love this character, and if you think this character is stupid, then you must think I'm stupid. And it's like, it's not what anyone is saying. But with fandoms and with this kind of like current and vacuum black hole of just like, we only have to be positive about this thing, and we can warp everything that somebody says is negative into a positive about this thing, like, it becomes very toxic. And I see a lot of it with different fandoms on Tumblr, on BookTube, in the YA community a lot, because the YA community, which is why I love it, gets really into and invested in different series and fandoms and characters and stuff, and we're so passionate about it, and I love that about us. But at the same time, it can start to get very, like, not sinister because that sounds like way over the top, but it can be very, like, combative and argumentative, and that's when, like, ship wars happen, which have been happening for, like, I know, plenty of years before even YA was a thing, but it's a very big thing now, especially with certain fandoms, and I wish that we could get to a point where it's okay to talk about things that you love, and you love a lot, but you can still say when the author or a character fucked up. For example, I'm gonna go through a bunch of my faves and just say things where, like, I love these things, but here's some problems with them. For example, Buffy the Vampire Slayer is my favorite TV show of all time. It's part of my identity. I grew up with it. I started watching it in like 7th grade, and I watched it all through high school, and I've rewatched the series multiple times. I can name all the episodes. I love it, and it is part of my soul. But it's not without fault. Joss Whedon, the creator, really exalts himself as being this like major feminist, but he does some really problematic things to his characters. For example, there is a whole plotline in season 6 where there is a rape that happens between two like romantically involved characters, and it's kind of written off as just like not that big of a deal. And it's actually two characters that I ship very much. And I see it as like the writers completely messed up. But I also understand that when people get mad about that, like, that is totally valid. That shouldn't have happened, and that's really icky. Like, why did that happen? That's messed up. We also have barely any diversity in that show. There are a ton of people in that show and a lot of different characters, and the majority, all of the main characters, are white. And there is very little LGBTQ plus representation, and there are two characters in that show who are lesbian later on in the series, but one of them is the bury your gays trope, and the other one technically should have been called bisexual, but she's not. I could go on with Buffy, but again, not without fault. Then we have Harry Potter, which everybody, especially right now, is in a tizzy about because we have half of the fandom seemingly being like, you can't criticize it, nothing bad comes out of Harry Potter, and the other half of the fandom being like, but look at all these things that have happened recently that are just kind of shitty. The most prominent thing that's happening right now is the Cursed Child stuff. I have not read the Cursed Child yet. I do own it, but I have not read it yet, but I've heard a lot of discussion about it, and so we have half of the fandom being like, this sucks, and the other half of the fandom being like, we can't criticize anything about Harry Potter because it's Harry Potter and everything about it is great, even though it does kind of suck a little bit. Like, I can't say anything bad about it. And this is what I'm talking about. There's a lot of problematic stuff that does happen in Harry Potter. It's true. J.K. Rowling is not without fault. She has a tendency to, after books come out, kind of including diversity in them afterwards, which doesn't count. Like, you don't get a gold star for that, but saying things like, oh, you can make the characters whatever race you want them to be. Like, yes, that's great for fandom, and I'm so glad that we have an author who's not being like, no, they have to be this certain way, but at the same time, like, you don't get points for, like, Black Hermione when, in canon, you never said that she was black, like, so you don't get points for me. Or Dumbledore being gay, who you said that afterwards, like, way after the fact, like, you don't get points for that, even though, like, yes, I read that totally as a thing, and I really ship him with Grindelwald, like, you don't get points from me because you made him gay, but you didn't make him gay in the actual books with, like, canon evidence. Like, you don't get points for that. And the horrible atrocity that is the North American school with all the new schools that she's created, like, all of the stuff that she has taken from Native American culture, just basically from Wikipedia, and being like, I'm just gonna use all this stuff, and it's very hurtful to all those communities, and you have people from those communities being like, this is messed up, and we have a lot of fans being like, no, it's not. It's like, you don't get to say that it's not messed up. Like, this is messed up. It is. She just took stuff and didn't do any research, and basically Wikipedia'd it, and we're all supposed to be like, but it's J.K. Rowling, and she's fine, and everything she does is perfect. No. She made a really great book series. She made a book series that a lot of us really love and identify with, but she's a human being, and she's flawed. The Shatter Me series by Tahada Mafi is one of my favorite series, and I hate the first book. Actually, the first book and, like, a little bit of the second book. I don't hate it, but it's bad, and it's not really that well written, and it's just kind of like, this isn't that good. And it's just kind of fluff cotton candy for me, and that's fine. I don't apologize for that, but, like, it's not the best books, like, ever created ever. It's not the best writing. It's a lot of, like, not super great world building. I still like it, but, like, it has its flaws. Then Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. And Sarah J. Maas in general, because this is one of the things I talk about the most as far as, like, the discourse on Tumblr, with being able to talk about things that you love and, like, criticize them with their faults. Like, this is a series that currently has such a huge fandom that people aren't willing to be, like, say anything bad about it, because if you say anything bad about it, you're, like, not a good fan. And it's so annoying, and it happens so often, and people are, like, scared to post negative reviews about it because they're afraid of people, like, mobbing them and being mad at them. Like, it's a problem. The Throne of Glass series, and actually both of her series, have spotty character development. She definitely tells you things instead of showing them. This is the constant complaint from a lot of people who are critical of her books, that Selena Sardothien doesn't kill people, like, at all in the series. I know a lot of people are gonna be like, oh, Assassin's Blade, and da-da-da-da-da, like, Assassin's Blade is technically novellas. I do not believe that a series should have to have you read the novellas in order for you to, like, get the rest of the stuff. In the canon, like, actual books, I know that Assassin's Blade is technically a book. We're not going to talk about it. It's novella bind-ups. In the canon, she has not really killed anybody, and she's being displayed as this, like, oh, she's this morally gray, horrible assassin, and she's, like, so feared. And it's like, when has she done anything morally gray or killed people, like, that don't deserve it, quote unquote? Like, if you're morally gray, then you kill people who are innocent. And she, like, hasn't done that. She doesn't really kill people at all. She is not this, like, super strong character in that way that she is told to us to be. Like, she is a scary assassin. She's been locked up. It's like, what if she hasn't killed people? She hasn't killed people. And then we have a startling lack of diversity in both of her series, honestly. In Throne of Glass, there's barely any people of color, and the few that there are, I think people are saying that in the fourth book there are some more, but again, I haven't read it. And a lot of times with Sarah J. Maas's book, she just calls people tan, and, like, being sun-kissed, it does not qualify as being a person of color. Like, it's not the same. Like, I could be sun-kissed and I am white as a sheet, but if I went out and got a little bit of sun, like, I could be sun-kissed. Like, so that doesn't count. And the few people of color we have had in the story have been used as a plot device to further push along the white character's character development. Like, horrible things have happened to them so that the white character gets motivation to go do the things they're supposed to do. And it's like, that's not diversity. at all. No, it's not. Even with the ACOTAR series, there has been a lot of inconsistency between books. There's, again, barely any diversity. Again, being sun-kissed does not count. If you are under a mountain and you get really pale, that means you're probably of, like, European descent look. You're not going to be, like, a person of color and become white under a mountain. Like, that's not how it works. So that doesn't count. Or really using a lot of very cultural clothing and stuff, but then having that be on somebody who's white. Like, why do we have fantasy series where everyone's white? Like, it's so boring, and it doesn't need to be done because you're in a fantasy world that doesn't exist and doesn't exist by our rules and social standards. So why do we have no people of color or very few and nobody on the LGBTQ plus spectrum? Why? I don't know why. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. And again, I love A Court of Mist and Fury. It's one of my favorite books of the whole year. I adore it. But again, the series that it's a part of is not without its flaws, and the author that created it is not without her flaws because she's a human being. And it happens. But I hate how so much of it is pushed under the rug because, oh, it's like the best series ever and it means so much to me. That's fine. It can mean a ton to you and it can be so important to you. But if you can't sit there and talk to somebody who's like, oh, I don't really like the new love interest that Selena has because he punched her in the face one time, like, and you're like, no, it's fine, like, be willing to discuss things with people in a nice way and be like, oh yeah, you know, that's problematic. I know about shipping problematic things and being like, okay, this is out of character or whatever. You don't have to excuse everything and be like, oh no, it's without fault. Like, these are the faults. Mistborn, one of my favorite series that I finished this year. Again, I think it's an amazing fantasy series. I love everything about it, and a lot of it is so flawless and it's woven together beautifully. But Vin, as a main character, is written really poorly. She's written by a white dude, and you can definitely tell. And again, I'm sure he's gotten better as books have gone on. I haven't been able to tell yet because I haven't read any more of his books. But like, that's a perfect series to me, and I don't like the main character. And I don't like who the main character is with. Like, I don't really like the two main protagonists in that series. I still like it, but like, I can say if someone's like, oh, Vin is written really shitty, I'm like, yeah, she is. She's written by a dude, and you can definitely tell. I can go on and on with a bunch of different series. I mean, there's so many series that I love that have issues. And there are some series that, like, even I have a hard time pointing out flaws for. Like, the Grisha Trilogy, for example. Someone could come at me and be like, here's a flaw of the Grisha Trilogy, be like, you know, like, I didn't even see that, really. Because I am so, like, in love with it that I can't even really see that flaw. Or I can say, like, I disagree with you, but, like, I totally think, like, your complaint is valid. Again, not everybody reads books super critically, or, like, you can read a book through a first time and think it's, like, flawless and wonderful, and think about it for a little bit and be like, oh, wait, there's some issues. Or somebody can come up to you and be like, hey, this and this and this was really shitty, and you're like, oh, yeah, that's good. But when someone comes up to you and is like, oh, there's this issue, and you're like, no, that doesn't it doesn't exist. That's when I have a problem. And that's how it becomes just kind of so toxic with fandom, being like, if you say anything bad about this particular series or this character or whatever, you're not a real fan. You're not as big of a fan as I am, and I'm the best fan. And it's like, there's no competition as far as fans. It's fine. And you can love something and point out and talk about its faults. And if anything, I think that makes you a better fan, critical of things and being able to like fully digest and discuss something that you love. Like, if anything, you're gonna get a deeper appreciation of that story and that series and that character and everything else when you can like see that it's a fully fleshed out thing with problems, because we as humans have issues, plenty of them. So I encourage you in the future, when you are trying to protect your faves, to be protective of them. Obviously, I have plenty of faves. I've done a whole video about like all the faves that I protect, but like, be willing to discuss with somebody, as long as you're not being combative and being mean and being awful. Like, it, you know, takes two to tango on a respect level. But if somebody's coming at you and being like, hey, this thing that you love did is really hurtful to me, or I think is really crappy, like, you can discuss that with somebody and it doesn't make you a bad fan. And it doesn't make them a bad fan, and you don't need to attack anybody. It's fine. We should be critical of the things we read, especially as reviewers. If you are a reviewer, I encourage you to look at the things that you're reviewing and be critical of them. And we're all gonna mess up and miss things because we don't all have the same worldview, but try to be more appreciative of the discussion that's happening around you all the time with fandom, because fandom is so fun because we are constantly discussing, and the discourse, like, I love it. And I encourage you to go deeper into fandom with that and really deeply discuss and enjoy the things that you enjoy, because it's fun. It's fun to sometimes talk about this thing that you hate in the series, like, obviously. Alright guys, that is it for today. Comment down below and just discuss with me about everything related to this topic. I know that when I mentioned I was going to do a video like this, a lot of you were really excited about it and like the flaws of things, and people like talking about negative things too, and it's fine. And there are plenty of things, like I said, that I love that a lot of you have been like, I hate that thing. And it's fine. I'm still gonna love it. Like, your hate of that thing is not gonna make me stop loving it, and vice versa. So comment down below, let me know, and I might even do some follow-up videos to this and stuff because, like I said, it's one of my favorite topics. I'm all animated today because I just love it so much. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see all you guys soon. Bye!